Welcome to Lesson 1, Add and Subtract Polynomial Functions. Our objective today is just to add and subtract polynomial functions. In order to do that, you need to be able to identify the like terms in the polynomial functions. So I have put something up here so that you can see one way of identifying like terms. You can indicate them by circling them, by putting boxes around them, by putting other types of shapes, or an underline. And I'll show you some different ways to help you identify the like terms. But it's really going to be important for you to know what a like term is in this lesson. So for our first example, we're going to add polynomials. So there's really just two steps involved. All you have to do, like I said, is to identify the like terms and then add the like terms. So here we have two polynomial functions and we want to add them together. So in this case, we have a 2x squared. So I'm going to underline that. And that'll be this first method, so we'll use an underline. And I look at the other one and see, do I have any other x squared terms? And I do. I have a 3x squared term. Okay, so that's one. Now let's look at 6x. So I've got a 6x here. Do I have any other x terms? And I have a minus 2x here. Really important to keep the sign with the term. And then our final term here is a 5. And if I look over here, I have another constant term, which is a negative 1. So another way to do that, other than boxing or circling, is to underline them in different colors or to do multiple underlines in order for you to identify which ones go together. So using this method, let's combine our like terms. So what we have is 2x squared plus 5x squared. So that gives us 5x squared. Okay, and now we move on to the x term. So now I have a 6x minus 2x. So that gives us a positive 4x. So I'm going to make sure to put plus 4x here. And then finally I have my constant term. So I have 5 minus 1, which is positive 4. So then I put positive 4 here. So now I have combined all of my like terms by adding them together, and I have one polynomial. Okay, let's try a second example of adding like terms together, and I'll show you another strategy that we can use in order to add these together. So again, we must follow our steps, so we need to identify our like terms. So we do have this 7x cubed, but when I look over here, I do not have a 7x cubed. So this is a term all by itself. We don't have a like term. So then we move on. So now I'm going to move on to this minus 4x squared. So now what I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to put a box around it. And notice that I'm putting a box around the sign as well. And when I come over here, I see that I have another x squared term. I have a 3x squared term. Okay, and remember that if there's not a sign right in front of it, we know it's positive. All right, so moving along, I have a 5x here, so I'm going to circle that along with its sign and walk over here to the second polynomial, and I do have a minus 11x, so I'm going to circle that one as well. And then finally, here on the end, it looks like I have a constant term of 2. That's all by itself. There's not one over there either, so I'm going to underline that. So I have some terms I can combine, and then I have some terms I can't combine. So let's actually write these out. Another way to do this is vertically. You can take 7x cubed. So I'm writing the first polynomial minus 4x squared plus 5x. And then I'm adding the second polynomial to it, so I'm going to align my like terms. So I'm going to put the 3x squared underneath the minus 4x. So I have a positive 3x squared, and then a minus 11x, and then a plus 2 on the end. Doesn't go with anything. So this is another way that you can add. You can add vertically by combining your like terms. So first I identified my like terms, and then I aligned them vertically. And now simply all I have to do is add these together. by adding straight down. So 7x cubed has nothing to add to it. I have a minus 4 and a plus 3, which gives me a minus 1x squared, or just minus x squared, either one. Then I have a plus 5 minus 11. That's going to give me a minus 6x, and then on the very end I have a plus 2. So that's one way to do it vertically. I could also continue to look up here and write 7x cubed, and then I could add these two boxes together. Minus 4 plus 3 is negative 1, and then add my circles together. 5 minus 11 is negative 6, and then have the plus 2 on the end. Whichever you prefer, whichever is easier is what you should do, whatever makes the most sense. Let's move on to subtraction. We have one additional step with subtraction. So first we identify our like terms like we always did. Then we line up the like terms vertically, and I'm just going to use this second example because I think it's easier with subtraction. But again, you can do it horizontally as well. And then we're going to subtract the like terms. So I added this extra step, line like terms vertically, because many people, when they're horizontal like this, forget that this minus out here means minus 1, and they forget to distribute that to every term in the parentheses. So sometimes it's easier if we just write things vertically. Okay, so let's identify our like terms. So I'm going to identify those with lines. So I have a 5y squared, which goes with my 2y squared. Now I have I have a 2xy here, do a double underline, and then a 2xy over here. Finally, at the very end, I have my constant term. I have a minus 9 and a minus 3 over here. So what I'm going to do is write these out vertically like I did the last time. So I'm going to start with my original polynomial, my 5y squared plus 2xy minus 9, and then I'm going to line up my like terms. So underneath that I have a 2y squared plus, and I'm just keeping the signs the same, I'm not doing anything with the signs, and then we have a minus 3. So I don't need to do anything with the signs if I line them up like this. I just put a minus out front, and I know that everything is being subtracted. So when I write my final answer, I always will take into account this minus. So I have 5 minus 2, which is 3y squared. I have 2 minus 2, which is 0, so those just cancel out. And then this is where it can be a little bit tricky. I have a lot of minuses. I have a minus 9 minus negative 3. So let's write that out. Minus 9 minus a negative 3. Well, one thing you know that you can do is you can always change this sign. But if you change this sign, you need to change the sign on the next number. So we can make that be a positive as well. So now I just have a negative 9 plus 3. That's a lot easier to figure out. That's a minus 6. So down here we have a minus 6. So my final answer is 3y squared minus 6. And I can just write that a little nicer. Put those together, 3y squared minus 6, and I am done. So I like vertically because I only have to put the minus here and I don't have to distribute a minus 1 into the parentheses. But again, if that's more familiar to you, make sure you do what's more comfortable. All right, let's look at our last example. So in this situation, I know I have subtraction because it says subtract, but then again, I see this minus and I see parentheses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and skip that second step, and I'm going to distribute for those of you that would rather distribute. So remember that I have a minus 1 here, and I need to distribute that to each term in parentheses in order to remove the parentheses. So before I do anything, before I combine like terms or even identify like terms, I would go ahead and I would distribute the minus 1, and I would get, so minus 1 times positive 4x to the 4th is negative 4x to the 4th. And then a minus times a minus 9 is a positive 9x squared. And then a minus 1 times a positive 7 is a negative 7. From here, notice I have no more parentheses, and all I have to do merely now is combine like terms. So in effect, I'm now adding. So I have a x to the fourth term, and I have another x to the fourth term. Moving along, I have a minus 2x squared term, and over here I have a positive 9x squared. And let's keep going. We have a positive 3x, and I don't have any 3x terms here, so that's all alone. And then finally on the end I have a minus 7. Okay, so now I'm going to combine my like terms. So I have a pink term here that I'm combining with this pink term. 6 minus 4 is 2x to the fourth. Then I move on here. I have a negative 2 and a positive 9, which gives me a positive 7x squared. Then I have this term, which has nothing to combine with it, so I just write it. And then finally, on the very end, I have this term, this constant term, which also has nothing to combine with it, so I would just write that as well. And now I have combined all of my like terms. Okay, so now we know how to add and subtract like terms. And why is this important? This is important because there's many times where things are modeled in terms of polynomials. For example, the revenue of a company or the expenses of a company. And in order to figure out the net profit, we must take the revenue function minus the expense function to get our net profit. And sometimes we do other things with geometry, like combining volumes of two shapes. And so it's important to know how to add polynomials together and subtract polynomials together in order to find out our end result. So hopefully now our objectives are met, and you should be able to add and subtract polynomial functions using your comfort method, either horizontally or vertically.